If you're in sales or marketing, chances are that you have seen this exact problem. You've got a big spreadsheet with a bunch of contact information, and all of the details are formatted differently. The phone numbers are formatted differently. The email addresses are messed up. You've got inconsistency everywhere in a spreadsheet, and you need to get it all standardized so you can import it into your CRM or just clean it up. The big problem with all of this is it's simple, but it takes a ton of time and it's tedious. And it's usually the thing that you don't want to do, but you have to get done anyway. Any sales or marketing organization has seen this. It's one of the biggest pain points of dealing with contact databases, messy data. And in today's video, I'm going to show you how you can get rid of that using AI to help standardize your contact list. I'm going to show you the exact process to show you how easy it is. I'm going to show you how you can get the same prompts that I'm using and the same example data so you can practice on your own. So I'm going to show you how you can take what used to take an hour or two, and we're going to reduce it down into just minutes. So let's get into it. First of all, let me show you an example of the data that I'm using today. This is fairly typical or a good representation of data that I've seen in the past. Now, this is all dummy information, so there's no real numbers or no real people. Let's take a look at some of the common problems. First of all, you have in the phone number column, you have a bunch of different formats. You've got numbers separated by dashes. You got period, parentheses are all different. And when you import this into certain CRMs, they want to see it in a very specific format. Secondly, location data, it's all in one field. So you've got city, comma, state. Typically, we want to separate these out into city and state. And then on top of that, each of these states has got their full name. We typically want to use abbreviations for states. Another issue that I see a lot is you'll have a column for email address, and people will enter multiple email addresses, or if you're getting contact information as an export out of a database, the export's going to send it out in a really messy format. So I've seen multiple email addresses all jammed into one field. The interesting thing about email addresses is that they are standardized. They're usually text with the @ symbol and then a fully qualified domain name afterwards. AI recognizes what that is, so we can leverage that and use it to our advantage. Another problem I see is country is often not abbreviated or standardized, so I'm going to show you how to fix that. And this is the one that really is frustrating. I saw this in an export out of a big database from a government provider not too long ago. The export came with the location of where the company was, and in the same field, they had the company name. I'm going to use this as an example of how you can use AI to just think intelligently and act as your assistant and clean this up. So here's our starting point, and we're going to walk through and fix this. What I've got is a brand new chat, and I'm going to take advantage of ChatGPT's latest models in that it can analyze data and do computational work. Before I get there, let me show you where all of this is, and you can follow along on your own. If you're part of my group, I've given access to all of these prompts, and you can go into here in my prompt library and pick up the Cleaning Up Spreadsheets version. And in here, I've got the file for dummy data. I've also have a template for what we want to standardize to. And then each of the prompts I'm going to use here, so you can grab these and do this work on your own. Let's go back to ChatGPT and get this started. Okay, first of all, I'm going to load in that same spreadsheet that I showed you with the dummy data. That's step one. And I'm going to go through and show you each of these prompts step by step so you can get an idea of what that looks like. The first prompt that I have that I want to fix is the telephone data information. And if you recall, we had a bunch of different formats in the telephone data. And I want to standardize everything in this column to one format where it all looks the same. That format that I've got is just displayed here in the prompt. So you can see that the command is really simple. It's analyze the spreadsheet by telling AI what it is, because it knows what a contact list looks like. And then specifically in the column labeled phone number, I want you to standardize, and I give it an example of what I want it to look like. That is really important. So I'll go ahead and hit enter. Looks like we got an error here, so I'm going to go back and I'll fix that. I added the incorrect template for the dummy data, so we'll go ahead and fix that. I'm going to run the same prompt again. Now you can see it's got all the information in there. Great, so we have a result now. It's got every entry. I've got 50 entries in there. But now under the phone number field, you can see that they're all valid. And it's worth going through to inspect and make sure that this is in there correctly. So let's go ahead and move on to the next prompt that I have. The next field that I want to fix is this one here, where I have company name and it's combined with some other words in there. On this prompt, I've told it very specifically, here's an example of what it looks like. And then here's what I want it to end up as. And I'm told it that we can remove some information and extract the other information. And I want to create a new column. So this way I can verify that the information is done correctly in case there's any mistakes. I'm not going to lose any data. So it's going to go through there and it's going to run through that whole command and it's going to clean up everything that I've asked it to do. And you can see that there's the new column with the old information. And now I've got the company name is extracted just the way I want it to look. That just took a few seconds. All right, so let's move on to the next prompt. And this time I'm going to separate out the location information. Now in this column here, you'll see that there's one column for city and state for every record. And I'm just asking AI to create two new columns, one for city and one for state. And we're going to separate out this information and place it into the next two columns. This is one of those features that I love because I've seen this problem so many times. And I've spent hours upon hours in my life fixing old contact list for exactly this type of information. And you can do this with formulas, but then you have to get really good at figuring out how to write formulas for Excel. And that can take a long time on its own. So now I've got a column for city, I've got a column for state. Perfect. Next prompt. Now that we've got state separated out, you can see that each state is written out in its full name. And I want to create a new column so it has the abbreviation for each state. And I want it to look like these examples right here. And notice that I'm explicitly putting examples in because I want AI to know exactly what I want out of this. It can probably infer this, but on these type of commands, I like to be as clear as I can, and providing examples is one of the best ways to get output that you want. Okay, so now we can see it's gone through and we get the next output. And I have a new column called state abbreviation. So we've converted Texas to TX and so on for every record in this list. Really easy. The next one that I'm going to fix is that column with the email addresses. So if you recall, in this example with dummy data, we have multiple email addresses in the same column. A pretty typical scenario. Fortunately, each email address is separated by a comma. So I've told AI that there are multiple email addresses and separated them out into new columns called email address 1 and a little typo, email address 2. I don't think that would be a problem. It would figure that out. In any case, we've got the instructions and we'll hit go. Now we have new columns for our email addresses, and this is clean, and each one is a valid email address with respect to how it's formatted. So we're making really good progress on this. Finally, I want to take this column for country and I want to normalize and standardize it so everything is USA instead of all these different versions. I'm just going to drop my next prompt in and I'm going to have it create a new column and have it standardize on USA. This is pretty simple. And again, this is an issue that I've seen countless times when I am importing data into a CRM. And the reason I like to add new columns is because if there is a mistake on updating existing column, I don't lose that data. And in most cases, AI will do it just right. But as a practice, I'll have it add a new column. we're pretty much done with what I wanted to do. I'm just going to download the table. Here is the new table, and I can go ahead and look at everything and see if it's giving me what I want. Phone numbers are valid. It has the old column still. But over here on the right, you'll see that I've got country abbreviation. I've got my new email addresses. State abbreviation is there. I've got my city and state divided up. And you can see my old company column is there and the new company. So from this point, what I would do is I would just delete the columns that were the original ones that I don't need anymore. And now I've got it in a complete format that I can import into a CRM. Okay, what we're going to do in this last example is I'm going to see if I can combine every step into one single prompt. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring in my dummy data to start. I also have a sample of the template that I wanted to base the output on. In this case, I'm just giving it some guidance on what I want the finished product to look like. Finally, I have a prompt that I created earlier. And all I'm doing here is telling it to run each of these steps in succession. I've identified the template that I've loaded up for it to use as a source of what it should look like. I've got the dummy data and every one of these steps is there. So we'll hit go and we'll see what happens. Okay, so it's finished up and it looks like we have a template that I can download. So let's take a look at what this reveals. So now we had the finished product, and I can already see that there are some issues with one of the instructions. You can see that not every state abbreviation has been completed, but everything else has. And this is something that can happen with AI when you run multiple prompts together. And what I'm going to do to see if I can fix this is modify my prompt for the instructions to ensure that it completes each one and validates it before moving to the next step. So give me one quick moment and I'll validate the instructions and see if we can fix that. Okay, so in order to really run this experiment correctly, I'm going to do a complete new chat so it doesn't have any history. And so I'm dropping in my dummy data. I've got my sample import template loaded. And I've got my prompt that I'm putting in. Now, the main thing that I changed between the earlier example and this one is I put this line in here that says mandatory, validate that each step has been completed fully before moving to the next step. So this is one of the things with AI is when you have steps, it will sometimes not complete each one fully if you're not explicit with what you want. So we'll see what we can do with this. And in real life, what I would probably do is I would run each one of these prompts in succession until I knew it was doing it perfectly each time. But you can see it's giving me a little bit more feedback each time as it's going through this because I've told it to do each step in a row. So one of my instructions had a reference to a third email address, and that's what I was having issues with. So it figured that out. I've got the city, state abbreviations. And you can see, again, some of the abbreviations have been left out. I'll tell it that. Now I've instructed it to fix the state abbreviations, and we'll see what it does with that. And I think, yeah, not every state is fixed. And what I'm doing now is commonly known as arguing with AI. And this is a reality for anybody who's going to work with AI. This doesn't stop. It doesn't go away. And it is one of the persistent challenges when you start using what I call compound prompts. And it can be frustrating. And it's one of the reasons why I like to break down prompts into single steps. But in this case, we've got it all there. And I like this, but I'm still wondering why didn't I get this the first time? So I'm going to ask it to create or refine a new prompt to ensure that each of these has been done correctly. So what I've done, and this is another trick that you can use, you can go and have AI validate your prompt. and make it more explicit. And in this case, I've got a new version that just contains a lot of very specific information. What I would suggest is if you're going through this and you're kind of going through the same scenarios that I am with some frustrations, this is a good exercise. It's still useful. This is where using AI to become more explicit in your prompt can help. So you watched me go through step by step where everything worked the way I wanted to. Then I combined everything into a single prompt and I ran into issues. And then I had it fix those issues. And now finally I've got a master prompt that it gave me that should be able to work better in the future. I don't have 100% expectation that this will work that way, but I do think it's going to work better. And this is part of the iterative process. It still is worth going down this path because it will save you time in the long run. So giving a couple examples here of what works, what doesn't work but can be fixed, and now a new improved version that I can test going forward. I hope this is useful and instructive, and I hope that you try this or run into the same problems I did and try to persevere. I think this is all worth knowing. That's it for today. Thank you so much. I'll talk to you soon.